Yeah, so, okay. I guess we'll actually start. So today we're gonna start off, we're building the tier list all over again with ranged items. Now, I did actually finish the melee one. So the melee one is as good as done. I'm not gonna actually build on top of it. I'm gonna have 3 different tier lists. Melee, ranged, and skills. Shields, they're all the same to me. You press triangle and something happens. That's a shield. But melee versus ranged, and even then, like range stuff, it's like all the same. I don't know what any of this stuff does. Like, when was the last time you guys actually saw me using a ranged item in this game? Besides heavy crossbow and boomerangs. Ice shards, heavy crossbow, boomerang, and maybe javelin. 4 items right there. Those are literally the only items I know in this entire game. I want to see, and I'm not gonna mess with my camera. If it wants to be weird, it can be weird. All right, so let's start it off. Same deal. I have some new sophistication right above us. You can see a little bit of the criteria we're going off of. I'm actually blind. V.blinds in the chat right now. Okay. We are working on the tier list, and from people I've talked to, some people actually want to see triple knockbow right here. Like, this is exactly where it's supposed to be. Off 2 weeks without a PC, that sounds actually terrible. Like, that sounds like a punishment, to be honest. Like someone actually sabotaged you. Alright, so for those who don't remember the setup, there are 5 criteria that you have to actually meet before you lose too many points. Number 1 is insta pickup. Like, would you grab the item regardless of what it says on the item, or even the situation you're in? Yeah, you might have like a legendary item, but once this thing drops, all of a sudden your legendary item looks like trash. So that's insta pickup. Is it usable on its own? That means that you don't need any kind of secondary item, and you don't need a mutation in order to activate the weapon. Now, of course, ranged items are a little different because they have ammo. So we don't want to deduct points just because it has ammo. It has to be a little more to it than that. Hey, Scott. Yeah, Scott. Buster is finally back. Buster's unbanned. Oh, perfect timing for Sekiro, Syndra. I played a little bit of Sekiro last night. Honestly, I've been playing it off stream because I'm getting better though, but I was really bad earlier. Usable in Biomes. So what that means is that the weapon needs to be able to clear prison quarters and hopefully promenade. Like, you have to be able to kill failed experiment, knife thrower, and bats. Maybe bombardiers and maybe bombers. The 4 monsters that it needs to be able to kill, and if it can't kill that stuff, then it loses a point. Yeah, always appreciate you stopping in, Scott. This is, I think you may have missed this, Scott. We're doing a tier list for range right now. And the way how I'm doing it, I'm just gonna go through one item at a time from the list here. There's no way we're gonna finish all of these in one sitting. So my goal is to finish ranged by Wednesday. So last stream of the week. And then there's usable on bosses, so it needs to be able to actually kill. My criteria lately has been the giant. Like, it needs to be able to kill giant, and if it can't, it sucks. And And yeah, that's a little unfair, like it can kill Hand of the King, blah blah blah. It's giant. That's what I'm talking about. And then the attack pattern, it has to be able to attack well. So you can imagine a weapon that has a super long windup where a runner might actually just swipe you across the face. Or in the case of ranged weapons, being able to kill bats is also very important. So that's the criteria. Duplex, or triplex, I guess. Compared to all the other ranged stuff, I could see myself grabbing this regardless of what I have. It's kind of tough though, because with ranged items, let's say I got a shuriken, a kunai, wherever that is. That's not the kunai. But let's say I got kunai, and then this thing drops. It's a real debate over, do I really want to grab a second kunai, or do I just want to get this? Or like if I have an explosive crossbow, do I really want this? If I had a quick bow, then yeah, if this thing drops, I'm gonna grab this. But there's a couple ranged items that I would kind of rather have, so I'm not gonna pick this up every single time I see it, but it's definitely like a debate. Usable on its own, yeah, you don't need anything to use triple knock. You don't need a mutation. The bonus ammo is nice, but for the most part, it can kill whatever you shoot at. Biomes, bosses. Yeah, I can actually link the melee tier list, I think. Yeah, so, I mean, it really, really does stuff. No, not F isn't... No, not F. Unused. I'm sorry, that means an item that I don't have enough experience with in order to rate it fairly. And that's a lot of the newest stuff. Oh, it's actually in this tweet. So for those who haven't seen the tier list, it's in that for melee. So I'm leaning towards keeping this thing in A. There's really, like, even when you're staring at bombers and bats. So we're talking about like trying to make this thing a B as best I can. The only thing that really makes this thing a B is probably the fact it's a ranged item. But other than that, it really doesn't do anything wrong. Like, I can't look at this thing and say, yeah, that is a trash item. That deserves to be a B. There's some other stuff in here that I might say that, but not the triple knock. I honestly, it's just almost like Balance Blade. So if you guys looked at the list, Balance Blade is kind of high up there. And I will almost consider triple knock like a Balance Blade in terms of just being good and not bad. It's decent and not terrible. So I think it can stay an A until, like I said, I'm blind. Here we go. So the final criteria as we start building this out is if a certain item drops. I didn't notice that the music stopped. If a certain item drops, there might be a situation where I'm gonna sell what I had and take this thing instead. So as we go through this, you might see me knock a point off just because if something else dropped and I would guarantee use it over multi-knock, then it can't stay in the same tier. It just can't. The tiers are also designed for like all of these items are kind of equally valid based off of my build, I guess. Alright, so the next thing here, kunai, and you guys know I'm a big fan of kunai, but this thing is not an instant pickup. Super fun, but you can't just see a kunai drop and automatically like, I don't care what this kunai does, I'm using it. And we do that sometimes. We do say, you know what, screw whatever plan I had, I'm using kunai. Just because it's wicked fun. But that doesn't win you games, so you gotta not get a point off from that. Situational. Crap situational is what we used to say in FF11. Alright, so usable on its own. I have done a decent amount of kunai gameplay over the weekend. So I was playing offline, just trying to see what I can do in terms of, like, content, I guess. And I played a lot of kunai, and I can say, when you jump in to prison quarters, so when you initially load into prison quarters, and you have a kunai and a shield, that kunai barely kills anything on its own. Did I catch the tweet from the other day? Yes. I was late though, like 8 hours late or something like that. But I did respond to it, I'm pretty sure, Asunder. I can't check it right now. Yeah, so the kunai are really good when you pair it together with something. You'll often see me use 2 items on the same button. So that's probably like the pro tip of the day. If you have 2 throwing items, you can change your button layout and then actually throw them technically at the same time. Now, I'm not sure like when they were building the game, when they decided that that was gonna be a mechanic. Like, we definitely need to be able to throw 2 ranged items at once. Sorry guys, I'm trying to take a quick peek here. Oh yeah, I did respond to that, Asunder. So Asunder posted some 1.1 wins. Some sanctioned builds, V approved builds, double Boomerang, which is gonna end up on this list. Spoiler alert, it's an S rank item in 1.2. Alchemy Carbine with the Hayabusas. And you guys know the Ice Shard already. The original Ice Shard. So yeah, those were wicked good Asunder. Yeah, so usable in biomes. Once you get the 2 of them, it's actually really good. But man, clearing prison quarters was actually terrible. I did not like it at all. And then the attack pattern to me is great. And boss fights, I actually think it's really good against bosses. So long as you start building up that bleed, it actually does real damage. Even in 5BC, I mean, not that I actually got to the giant, but thinking about the giant fight, once you pop 1 fist, you'll get all your kunai back. And your goal is to literally just unload all of the kunai into one of the fists and just pray it bleeds out. If it doesn't bleed out, you basically lost. And because you don't have a shield, you're gonna actually struggle just a little bit. Yeah, Big Will, that's... I love doing that. Square button and you just spam square as much as you want. It's so freaking good. But I do have to take a point off because it's not instant pickup, not usable on its own, barely clears biomes without its 2nd item. So that drops it down to a C rank, unfortunately. As much as I love kunai, I can't justify keeping it where it is, like in the B range. Once you get 2 though, it's legit. So C also becomes situational. I'm not gonna type it out. But we did the same thing with a lot of melee C rank items. They're just situational. They aren't good enough to just grab it, but if you want to build towards it, it ends up being really good. We start from scratch because this is range only. I'm only doing these items here. So it'll be 3 separate lists eventually. Alright, you guys know for sure, this is not an instant pickup. It is usable on its own, but it barely clears biomes. And it sucks because honestly, fighting everything except failed experiments is great. Like, Electro Whip will kill it'll kill knife throwers, it kills bats, it kills bombardiers. It can get a bomber out of the air. I don't know if it'll just kill it in one combo, but it fights everything except failed experiment. That's like the only thing it fails to kill in one combo. Curse Sword is D. Again, I felt like I just couldn't justify putting it on the scale. Cosmender with the Redo.
Too easy.
Welcome guys, I'm Veedotme. You guys are just in time. We're building the ranged DPS tier list. Hopefully you guys actually use ranged weapons, because I certainly don't, unless it's heavy crossbow. A matter of fact, I should just put heavy crossbow up here right now. Just make it an S. You guys know that's the best item in the game. Hands down. No argument against heavy crossbow. But Cosmender is actually an expert on ranged items. He went through survival and then tactics using a lot of ranged weapons. So definitely gonna send him a tweet when this is done, because I gotta get the Cosmender sign off on this one. And yeah, as you're going along, just like Syndra here, feel free to make your own tier list. I think you can just search out tier maker, but it's cool stuff. So yeah, this thing cannot kill a failed experiment to save its life. It just can't. And I hate that, because as much as I love the attack pattern, as much as I love the auto targeting, failed experiments will kill you almost 100% of the time. Like literally, like the counter to the, it's like the devs actually planned it out. Like, we have this weapon that's probably gonna be busted in 5 BC because it kills bombers. So we need to balance it out. And someone decided, you know what? Double failed experiments health bar. And Electro Whip players will never be able to kill those again. Yeah, no problem, Cosmender. Thanks for tuning in and bringing your community over to us. I did see you on Sekiro. Someone got Cosmender to play Sekiro. I don't know how you guys did it, but I saw him fighting Madame Butterfly, and that's always a good fight. And then bosses, honestly, I've never kept an Electro Whip in 1.2 all the way up to a boss, but going from memory, I feel like it could probably fight everything except maybe Timekeeper. Yeah, it's tough, Kellen, because I can't. And maybe it's because I need more hours in this game. I feel like it's not really... There's no way this item's a B. I feel like there's no way this thing can be a B. But there's a good chance it is. And maybe as I actually bring in other stuff, it will gain a point and lose a point based off of other items that drop into here. So let's actually move on to the next one, and then as I start dropping things into a C, I might realize that, hey, This item I would actually take over something in a C, and that bumps it up 1 point. Kunai is much slower, yeah, but it's all about like the kind of build you would have with a kunai. Like I said, this is often like the situational section. But let's go with the firebrand. And again, I love the feedback, guys, because as we're going through this, I start to think about situations that I didn't even mention before. So definitely keep the feedback coming. Firebrand, insta pickup, I want to say no. Because what? That's tough. I mean, you can't instant pick up a firebrand. Just like out of just principle. I feel like you just can't. Usable on its own. Honestly, so this is gonna be a real comparison between firebrand and kunai that you guys are gonna see. So the problem with kunai is that the time to kill, so like failed experiment, honestly is like the threshold that you have to beat. Plus having a knife thrower behind him, I feel like if you don't get piercing on the kunai, firebrand actually kills him better. Aren't firebrands a bit slower? So on single target, it's possible, but the difference here is that as you're lobbing, and I guess kunai has auto targeting too, but I feel like the firebrand will, like, maybe it's because you need multiple targets, but if you have more than one target in one room, it's better than kunai, in my opinion. And again, this list is also a V list, so you will see things that I definitely steer myself towards, where you guys might steer yourself in a different direction instead. For places without hills, it has a good animation that stuns about everything. Yeah, I definitely love the attack animation. That's why I didn't drop points on either bosses or attack pattern for the Electro Whip. It was the first 3 points that lost. So Biomes is good, bosses it's good. The attack pattern is technically good, but I think I would take Duplex over Firebrand. The Molotov cocktail, this is actually tough. Like, there's part of me that really wants the Molotov to be an A rank. I'm not lying to you guys. Like, I honestly would love to see Molotov right here. What prevents killing enemies one by one? Probably because it's Veedotme playing the game. Pyro is better than Molotov. Spoilers. I would do this. I'm blind. This is spoilers right now, but I'm leaning towards this real bad. But we'll see. Maybe it won't be that way. So I'm gonna put this in a B right now, but I have a strong feeling this thing's gonna shoot up to an A. And what's funny about this is as I'm doing this, we're gonna load into a game in about 20 minutes. And you guys will see, like, V is gonna pick up the A rank Firebrand, and then we die instantly. That's the, oh, it is so freaking good. I love that so much. It's gonna be like, V, prove to us this item's a A rank. And it's like, okay, here we go. Then I fall flat on my face. But yeah, Pyro is... Ooh, Pyro is actually way down there. That might be on tomorrow's stream, Asunder. Okay, so Ice Blast, Frost Blast. I don't even know the name of this item because I never use it. To me, this thing is Like, how bad is this? What happened to Pyro? Is it nerfed? So it was rebalanced, is the word for it. They like spread out the damage between the 4 shots. So it deals less damage up front and I think more damage towards the end of the combo. So probably like when you think about time to kill, it's about the same. But when you have like a lot of movement in 5 BC, for example, because the failed experiment is jumping all over the place, your time to kill instantly drops. But we'll talk about that tomorrow. Right now, I gotta figure out how to get this item out of F rank. Instant sell. Like, I don't even read Ice Blast. I just press R1 as soon as I see it. Which is not a lie. I technically sell this thing as soon as I see it. Good in the right setup, but super situational. Has good range. Yeah, so the only change that they did to this item was they gave it ammo. And that was because back in the day, people used to drop turrets on Hand of the King and then spam triangle to keep him CC'd while the turrets did the whole job of killing it. So I feel like in that situation, it's probably still the same because even though monsters build resistance now, by the time you get to Hand of the King, chances are that turret is gonna absolutely obliterate him. But I sell it instantly, so I have no idea. I cannot tell you if this item is good or not, because to me, it's a $1,000 bill just laying on the ground. As bad as that is, dude, I might have to leave this as an F. Not for the shock value, but I really need people to convince me that this thing's not an F. So, like, I think what really made me hate this item so much was versus Purulent Zombies. So for those who don't know, the Purulent Zombie is a zombie that explodes into leeches. And back in the day, unless you had enemies slow around the target, the Frost Blast is not fast enough to freeze a leech before it hits you. And that was actually terrible. Really good 0 to 3 BC item though. But after that, and this list is a 4 BC plus list, I'm struggling. Takes care of bloodworms and bombers. Bombers, this does actually sound really good against bombers. So like maybe going excuse me, maybe this is like the Toxic Sewers weapon right here. And you guys know I hate Toxic Sewers anyway. So I probably just don't have enough experience with that item. Something I do have experience with though is this thing. Bow and Endless Quiver. And I actually used to really like this item. I don't insta pick it up anymore. But what I really struggle with on this thing is not getting Pierce. Not as fast as it used to be. So they did change Bow and Endless Quiver. So they gave the combo, reduced the speed, and it's actually really good if the last hit pierces. Didn't know it was a 4 BC. Yeah, no problem, Big Will. And like thinking about those 0 to 3 concepts still helps in 4 BC, because like you said with the bombers, it's the same thing in 4. Has not dropped you in over 100 runs. So some people might say that's a blessing. I for one wouldn't, because I like having all the weapons unlocked. But there would definitely be some people who would come in and say, dude, consider yourself lucky. Especially before custom mode was introduced. they would say you don't want to see this item. But like I said, usable on its own, but in biomes, I feel like, to me, and I guess this goes hand in hand with usable on its own, to me it's only usable if it pierces. The last shot critting makes the first two do no damage. I kind of agree with that. Like, my favorite part about this weapon is the final shot. Like, I love the final shot when it pierces the target and like just starts one-shotting stuff. That's wicked fun. But you may as well just use Nerves of Steel wherever it is. You may as well just use this if you want to one-shot stuff with that final hit. So that makes me think, like, when is Bow and Endless Quiver ever the right item when you have stuff like Nerves of Steel? I guess it's bosses, but then again, Nerves of Steel like rips through bosses, so I just don't know. I'm only taking it down a notch for bosses because I feel like this thing will take a long time to kill a boss. And maybe I should look at what other affixes a Bow and Endless Quiver has. Because besides Pierce, if this thing could get like poison on hit, I think it could be okay against the giant. But with only piercing, I feel like that's not that great against the giant. Huh. Attack pattern's fine. Like, it's tough to deduct points from this stuff for having basically being a bow. Like, you could say, yeah, knock a point off because it has a combo. Like, just give me the crit up front. But it's tough. I'm almost leaning towards this, but I'm gonna wait because I think there's some D rank items in ranged weapons, and I want to leave that space available. So once I drop a D in here, we'll take another look at Bow and Endless Quiver and see if it's as good as the D rank item or if it's better. Alright, Marksman Bow. And just to tell you guys, I used to be a Marksman Bow hater. In all honesty, like, I kind of still am. But it's only because of my playstyle. Marksman Bow is really good for people who like to fish for monsters. And when I say fish for monsters, I say as you're walking through, you press square. And chances are something's gonna die off the screen. And that doesn't really mesh with my playstyle of just rushing in like I'm brainless. But I can't say that I should remove points just because it's not in my playstyle. I should try to keep it at least like a little bit objective. Worst bow in the game versus not worse. So we have two different sides of the spectrum here. If you look at the numbers, it's really good. But, so Prison Quarters, it's good. Promenade, it's good. Toxic Sewers, it's good. I say once you start getting into like Ossuary, Stilt Village, maybe even Slumbering Sanctuary, but this thing's struggle in Slumbering Sanctuary. Well, I can tell you that I definitely don't instant pick it up. Like, yeah, it can be strong, but for me personally, I just can't do it. It is usable on its own. It does kill stuff. It is usable on bosses. So maybe it just loses a point for the attack pattern, because it's actually a pretty slow bow, and the part of it kit that makes it live is the long range shot. Half the stages late game that sucks. Long corridors is good. Yeah, so all of those are definitely valid. I think my problem with this is just fishing. I feel like if I like the item a little better, I would put it up to an A. But because I personally have an issue, like for example with purulent zombies, you go and you kill a zombie, and then you have like 4 leeches in front of you. Now you can say, okay, you were supposed to kill the zombie with the first shot. That's why it's good. But in some cases, the zombie spawned at your feet, and all of a sudden you can't kill it. You have to use a skill to kill it, and now you might be on cooldown. So that's my problem with it, and I'm putting that under attack pattern, because outside of the attack pattern, it can kill that stuff. It does just fine against all of that stuff until the bow is the problem. Like, the monsters aren't the problem, it's the bow that's the problem. Some are too fast, so it's not the best on bosses. Yeah, you gotta be an expert at kiting.
Have you seen my laptop?
Hopefully by then you actually have something else you can use. Just gotta mute one quick second, guys. Okay, so I'm actually gonna leave this as a B right now, but it might change. Again, depending on what other items I bring in, it could very well move. Okay. Everyone's favorite, the Infantry Bow. Who remembers Infantry Bow? When was the last time one of you guys used an Infantry Bow? I can tell you, I used one of these over the weekend, and in prison quarters, it actually wasn't all that bad. That was a brutality build though, so I'm almost wondering if, like, as soon as you get, and again, I would drop that for a melee weapon as soon as I saw it. But I have not used this thing in a tactics build yet. And in my head, I would think a tactics build with this would be a skill-oriented build, where maybe you have like Master of Arms, and then something like the Knife Dance. But I feel like that's a lot of work, because you could just get double owl instead. And then with owls, you definitely don't want to use this thing. So I'm gonna take it off of being an insta pickup. Hey, how you doing, Real Out? Oh, Fire Dragon, isn't that the Luigi's Mansion player? New to Dead Cells and had only beat it once, then you focus on getting a bow and 2 turrets, and now you're winning back to back, you're farming W's. Yeah, that used to be the dream back then. Nowadays, I mean, I'm not gonna say that it's bad in 4BC. I've just been playing so much Brutality and Survival that I just haven't had a chance to get real hours with tactics. Alright, so usable on its own. It does its job on its own. I mean, technically it's not unusable by itself. It does do stuff. It's just like once you get into biomes and you stop one-shotting things, it becomes a real problem. And by one-shot, I mean, and this is the criteria that everything has to meet. Failed experiment, right? So you're right here. Failed experiment is right here. and Knife Thrower is right behind him. If you can't clear the failed experiment that's like right in this center area, you die to the Knife Thrower. If you roll through the failed experiment and you one-tap him with the Infantry Bow, and then you fight the failed experiment after, it's a good item. But if you can't one-shot the Knife Thrower, you're in real trouble. Like, you're in so deep at that point. Not to mention that there might be other crap behind the Knife Thrower too, because you just rolled into everything. Those are when you lose points as Biomes. Bosses, however, I honestly don't mind Infantry Bow on really all the bosses, but only because like I'm so used to that melee fighting. I feel like that's not how you're supposed to play it out, but again, I just don't have the hours to go behind it. So I'm gonna keep it, like, just thinking theoretically now, I feel like I'm gonna give it the point for the bosses, but take a point off for the attack pattern, which is tough. I kind of want to keep it here. So looking at these two items are almost polar opposites to each other. This thing deals crit at max range. This thing deals crit at close range. If you look at the damage, oh. Hold up. So, I mean, it's easier to crit. So maybe conceptually, you can get off 2 crits by the time you can get off 1 crit. Maybe that's what the devs were going for. Rillout likes the B tier. Only if I make Marksman A tier. This is tough. They even like, let's point them up against each other. So now they're like fighting each other. The winner goes into A rank. I don't know. If I get Infantry Bow today, I'm gonna use it, I think. We definitely want to get in some gameplay with this item, and maybe the Electro Whip too. So if we see any of these 3 items, we need to play some games with them. Play safer and deal maximum damage. It's just in the 4BC environment, it gets real scary. So that's why I kind of want to play both of these today. Well, these 3. I'm sorry. I don't care about Marksman Bow. I just want to play these 3. But yeah, I do know people really like the infantry. Real question is, do you really want to use a bow that only deals damage at close range? In some cases, yes, but you gotta have the rest of the build around it. So like, not owl. Not grenades, I guess? Like ice grenade? I don't know. I can't think of what other items I wouldn't want to use. Wave of Denial. Wings of the Crow. Let me know if you've used Wings of the Crow lately, because you might be the one putting this thing on the tier list. So yeah, I'm gonna do some experimentation with that one. And Quick Bow might be the last one we do before we start playing the game. Yeah, Marksman Bow did have its attack speed either nerfed or it's always been that slow. Or actually, they may have increased the speed. I don't know, but it's still slow. Quick Bow. So, again, a little hint of knowledge for you guys. So before we start going into Quick Bow, for those who have used it and thought it was bad, what makes Quick Bow good is you can actually hold down the attack button. Think about Lightning Bolt, how you hold the button down and it just deals constant damage. You can do the same thing with with quick bow, that thing up there. And that feels a lot more natural than spamming square trying to crit enemies. You just want to dodge roll, hold the down button so you're ducking, and then hold square. And I'm pretty sure it fires faster than you spamming square. Like almost guaranteed. So, unfortunately, this is a 4BC and higher test, and I did use this over the weekend, and I can say I would probably not pick it up every single time. But besides that, I honestly feel like it's actually really good. So versus these two, so this thing will one-shot. Like, we know that if you're at max range. This thing might one-shot if you're at close range. This thing actually deals less damage. Like, I think overall, it might deal less damage than Infantry Bow. But there's a different kind of gameplay involved. Man, I almost feel like these three have to go together. Wow, this is like a real battle for A rank. You have 6 bows out of 10 ranked items. Yeah, that's just unlucky. I'm literally going down the list here. And like, everything else is way at the bottom. But part of me wants to keep this as an A rank. But I feel like if I were to keep quick bow as an A, I should honestly make that an A. So this, like, the battle of A rank is growing. I'm gonna have 10 items between A and B all fighting each other to try to get into the A slot. Like, which one of these is just as good as triple knock? That's like the real question. Are all B tier? With Pierce they get better? Pierce on this thing is actually really fun. Pierce on this is pretty fun too. Pierce on all of them's good. Like, if you get Pierce on any of these and you make them live, like you put them at the range they're supposed to be, they're all wicked good. But I can't have everything as an A rank. Or can I? Is that unreasonable? I would 100% take a heavy crossbow over any of these. Any day of the week. And I love the stuff, the feedback you guys are giving me. This is actually awesome. So, I might have to keep it all A rank until I get more practice in and we start dropping these things down. Maybe tonight's gonna be like tactics only night. I still need a win though, that's the problem. Alright, let's do one more. Because that was actually pretty quick. Ice Bow. So Ice Bow. So I have won games with Pearsall Ice Bow. And certain other Ice Bows that have really good affixes to them. I'll take Ice Bow over Frost Nova. But I won't take Ice Bow unless it has Pearsall. And as bad as that is, I think that fits the criteria of a D rank. Like, I would take anything over an Ice Bow, but there are situations where you will see me grab an Ice Bow. And I'm pretty sure it's the right call. But that's like one affix out of, and it's rare. So you can't even count on it being there. So now I really have to like convince myself how to make this not a D rank. It can't kill stuff on its own. So it's It's also unfair to rank it as just the fact that it can kill or not kill. Then again, killing is the ultimate in crowd control. You'll never get hit by an enemy that's already dead. Targets bleed when thawed. No, I'm talking about Pierce All. Bleeding when it thaws is kind of good, but I feel like by the time it unfreezes, it should be dead. And if it's not dead, then I have some real problems. Like, I'm gonna struggle if it's not dead. So, yeah, if I were to do it objectively, I should take points off for each one. Not an instant pickup. Not usable on its own, in my opinion. In my opinion, it needs an affix to be good. Otherwise, I would rather just kill whatever it is. Or have a shield. Something like that. Usable in biomes, that's probably the only place it's really usable. Unless maybe you get that bleed when thaw. That might actually do something against bosses. Attack pattern is actually really good. So it gets a point for the attack pattern. I love the attack pattern on the ice bow. It's just standard single missile. It goes up a little bit. It goes down a little bit. It's perfect. Can't argue with that. So that's why it's a D. So I know you guys might be looking at this list and thinking, he has a lot of items to go. I have no idea how he's gonna get any more rank S items. Maybe think of it as a point system instead of a lettered system. Yeah, so that's a good way to put it. And that's what I've kind of been doing. I've been sticking it in S, and then as we talk about each point, it loses a point. And then eventually, once we start getting more items on the list, I'll decide, hey, a matter of fact, I feel like I don't want Molotov over any of this stuff. I'll put it next to it, and something else might go into B, like this. I'd rather sell my Molotov and get a kunai. It's not true, though. This is almost true. Like, if I had my way, it would probably be this, but not yet. Not today, at least. Once we get through tomorrow, we might see some changes. So I just want to do a little bit of recap of how we constructed the list. I do have my gear page up. So the way we're going to do this is just straight down the list. This is all the ranged items right here. And we currently just did Ice Bow. Even though I know Heavy is on the list, trust me, we did not talk about Heavy. And then we have all of these left to do. And the goal is to finish by Wednesday stream. Or on Wednesday stream, we should be finished with this. So the way how this works, I have 5 different criteria, which you can see off to the side here. Each thing that the weapon fails to meet basically deducts a point. So if it loses any one of these 5 bullet points, it goes straight down to the next level. Right now, Airless is shaking her head at Amazon. Amazon is trying to get as much money as they can with the extension that I added. So the extension is a poll. It allows you guys to vote on stuff. I don't know if anyone's voted yet, but the poll was, you know, brutality versus survival versus tactics. But Amazon, being Amazon, they went ahead and threw in some extra stuff for you guys. So if you vote in the poll, you can pick up a Nintendo Switch at the same time. So the tier list. Going through the different bullet points, the different rankings, as it were. It can go from an S down to an F. The unused items here are items that I have no real experience with. I can't even judge them fairly. because either A, I don't have the hours to back it up, or B, it's too unfair to judge it over everything else. And that's essentially the cursed sword here. You can't truly measure the cursed sword because you don't just pick it up and use it. Like, it's either broken or it's bad. But as far as the bullet points go, the very top point is insta pickup. What that means is that you're basically grabbing the item regardless of what the item does. The item falls to the floor. You might have S rank whatever in your inventory. It doesn't even matter. You see that thing drop, you grab it. That's also like very good criteria to be as a S rank as well. But insta pickup items often don't really care about their mutations, don't really care about your affix, doesn't need a pure soul, doesn't need all of this other stuff. It's just instantly good as soon as you grab it. Usable on its own, that's same thing, it doesn't need anything else to activate. So by that I mean like oil sword, maybe? I know oil sword for me is listed as a B rank, but there's also things like the Sadist Stiletto that needs something else for it to be active. Hey, how you doing, Echo? Yeah, if you didn't see Echo, you got a gift sub at random. Someone just decided that you're the lucky guy, and I hope you bought some lotto tickets afterward. Or at least you scratched a $1 scratch ticket. Tell me you did something. Usable in Biomes. So what that is, you basically need to kill failed experiments. And again, I should point out that this is a tier list for 4 BC and higher. Gifted sub, generous sub gifter. I will definitely let them know. Failed experiments, knife throwers, bats. If it can't kill a bat, it is an absolute garbage item. Bombardiers and bombers. So those are like 5 enemies that this thing has to be able to kill without assistance. And if it can't kill those, it loses a point. Usable on bosses, and again, we can't really just deduct points from these just because they're ranged items. If they are ranged and they have ammo, I mean, that's the whole genre right now. Like, yeah, there's some items that run out of ammo super fast and then you die because you can't kill anything anymore. That might deduct a point. And there's also items with unlimited ammo that deal no damage at all, and you're hitting things for 9 years, loses a point. So, usable on bosses means that it needs to be able to kill Timekeeper and kill the giant. Hand the King is whatever, that fight doesn't count. Concierge doesn't count. Conjunctivitis is whatever too. So really, all I care about is Timekeeper and Giant. If you can kill those, you basically won the game anyway. Shoutouts to anyone who hasn't beaten the game. After that is the attack pattern. So the attack pattern, and it's kind of weird when you talk about ranged weapons because not a lot of ranged weapons have an attack pattern in like the standard sense. But from what we're looking at the range. So like the distance away from the target you have to be, or maybe you have to be within a certain distance. We're looking at the verticality, if you can actually shoot stuff above your head, or if it's a bat and it's gonna explode in your face. And then homing. If you fire the arrow, will it literally just fly right over the enemy's head, or will it kind of dip down a little bit? So that's what we mean by attack patterns. Some of these items have it, some don't. So that caused it to lose a point. So right now, the first item to start off with is Heavy Crossbow. I tossed this thing as an S, just trolling yesterday. But in all honesty, this thing is a borderline S for me. And I'll go through the points so everyone is perfectly okay with it. We will be objective when it comes to the Heavy Crossbow. Insta pickup, the only thing I remotely care about with Heavy Crossbow is if it pierces. If it doesn't pierce, I just have to slow down a little bit. And that's fine. Like, obviously it's me and I don't slow down anyway and I end up dying. But once you get the pierce, it's busted. Completely broken item. This is honestly, to me, one of the strongest items in all of 2019. Now, I do have a lot of unused things down here, so I do need to get some hours in on these. But you guys don't understand, being able to clear a failed experiment standing in front of a runner with a bombardier like over your head, it's incredible. Like, you've never seen anything like it. It doesn't need any kind of mutation or secondary skill to go live. Maybe you get ammo just so you can spam it on bosses better, but doesn't even need it because it deals ridiculous damage, and you're probably gonna have a shield anyway, so you're gonna get all your ammo back. It's insane. The attack pattern. So back in the day, this used to have a really bad wind-up. So in this case, we're thinking of attack range and attack pattern as a wind-up. You press the button, and then you're waiting for so long for that shotgun shot to go out. Hey Kirby, how you doing today? I actually saw you helping out people in the Discord earlier today, so thank you for that. That's your community service, your good deed for the day. So, like I said, the attack pattern was bad on this thing, but one single fix is all it needed. That harpoon that it fires in the new patch completely fixed the attack pattern. Like, there's no situation anymore where I'm firing the shotgun shot and I'm thinking, oh crap, I shouldn't have hit square. If you have a target in front of you, pressing square is probably the right option, 9 times out of 10. Like, there's hardly a situation where you need to press circle instead of just attacking with this thing. That's how good it is. And that's why I'm not deducting points for attack pattern either. Like, you can say it's slow, it is slow, but the difference between something like this and something like broadsword is broadsword you might have to dodge roll. This thing you don't. You just walk up to it's a literal shotgun. You just walk up to the target and you press square. And if it doesn't die, then you probably screwed up somewhere with your stats. Chances are it's gonna die though, regardless of what it is. So that thing is staying as an S for me. Someone can probably chime in and help me think about deducting points. I can't guarantee I'll deduct a point from the crossbow, but I'll consider it. Like half a point. Now on the other hand, this item, which has received buffs, still suffers from the wind-up. Now, what they added was it gives an enemy a very quick snare, but Heavy Crossbow does it better. A matter of fact, as much as I love the assault rifle, I guess you can call it, I really sell it more often than I pick it up. And I used to use this thing a lot. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not a hater of this weapon, but when it comes to 4BC plus, when you're trying to actually mow down a failed experiment and he just either dashes through you or he doesn't get snared when he jumps. That's probably the worst part about this weapon. The snare is like on the very first bullet, and then the failed experiment jumps right after. And during that jump, the snare doesn't activate again. It took a damage nerf? Wow. That's actually awful. I didn't know that. The root is definitely, which I call that a snare. That's League of Legends talk, I guess. The snare being nerfed is definitely really bad. And I almost think it's because of stuff like failed experiment. That would make it too easy of a counter against the failed experiment. So they probably decided that, yeah, it can't root for that long. Let's go ahead and have the FE just kill you. And it's like, okay, that's fair. Usable in biomes. Again, it's okay. It's borderline okay in prison quarters. When it was tacked only, it was like 10 DPS stronger than it is now when it crits. Wow, that's actually really sad. So my real experience with this item is probably up until prison depths. And I'd say the majority of the time that I pick this and I go to prison depths, I die. And that's because, again, you're facing enemies that you have one chance to kill it. So Slasher. The Slasher teleports to you, you dash through to dodge the first hit, you hold square, and start shooting him in the back. But the snare only lasts for half a second. He will turn around and just swipe you. And it's really the worst thing you can imagine. So I don't even like using this thing against anything but zombies. And yeah, you can say, sure, assault rifles are great against zombies. But I have a heavy crossbow I could just use. Heavy crossbow to me does everything this does, but better. Unless you have a wolf trap. That's probably the only time this item, to me, is super good, is when it's combined with another form of CC. For those who don't know, the assault crossbow, what's the real name on this thing? Repeater crossbow, I'm sorry. The repeater crossbow crits snared enemies. So if you have a wolf trap, it actually does pretty good damage against that. Which puts it down another point into like the situational range. C for situational. Timekeeper, it's not bad. As long as you can roll through, and by the time you get to Timekeeper, you really should have something else to activate this weapon. If you don't, then Timekeeper is gonna be kind of rough anyway. The Giant, you can roll repeater crossbow that shoots an arrow upward. Yeah, this thing does it. So bosses, again, I don't even care about conjunctivitis. Bosses to me are Timekeeper and the Giant. So thinking conceptually, I can imagine the conjunctivitis fight being similar to the Giant fight using this thing. So I think it can kill the Giant if you tried really hard. Why is Firebrand rank B in my opinion? So I like Firebrand because it can almost kill everything in just one Molotov, one bottle. For anything harder, it takes 2 bottles. And I can literally just set it and forget it. I can walk up to a failed experiment, throw 2 Molotovs at it, and just walk away, and it'll die. Now me, I throw 2 Molotovs out, roll through him, and I just keep running. And I just throw Molotovs while I run. And for some reason it works. So you remember we had a double knife game yesterday? I'm starting to feel like double Molotov is actually better than that. But yeah, this thing, I think it's a solid C. It can kill. Like, I'm not gonna say it can't, but the amount of deaths I've had because I decided to pick up Repeater just for fun, it's way too high. Okay, Hokuto. So Hokuto's Crossbow, Hokuto's Blessing. You get this thing really early when you start playing the game, so my opinion is gonna be a little jaded for this item. Might rank it a little higher than it deserves to be, but it's honestly not that bad. It just increases your damage. Really just in exchange for having a shield. So I guess it's a playstyle thing. Like for people who really need a shield and 4 BC and higher, it drops some Cannibals so you wouldn't say you don't get it early. Cannibals is Graveyard and Slumbering Sanctuary. How quickly did I get a Slumbering Sanctuary? Actually, Slumbering Sanctuary needs a rune, and I think Graveyard needs a rune too. So yeah, maybe that was like the daily challenge of me talking, because this thing does appear in daily challenge a lot. Oh, Clock Tower. Yeah, that's another good way to get it. So that makes sense. And Clock Tower is usually everyone's first roadblock too. So Hokuto, like I said, I feel like it's kind of a playstyle difference. If you want a shield or if you have that slot open for damage, I feel like you take Hokuto. Of course, it's not usable on its own, so I kind of have to deduct a point for that. There are some builds out there that I've seen where people go Hokuto and then like double phaser or double turret or even like double infantry grenades, where the only thing that you do is press square with this, you have a shield, and then you just run through and spam everything else. I don't know how good that is in 4 BC. I have a strong feeling that double phaser cannot kill a failed experiment, but hey, I might be wrong about that. So maybe that's just a matter of trying it. This might be the new what's the name of this thing? The new this thing. Spite Sword. So it might be a new Spite Sword situation where the build's busted, but I've never used it, so I can't really judge it. But everything else about Hokuto, it works. Like, it does its job every time. It's just not usable on its own. And you can say, okay, V, well, isn't this the exact same thing as an ice bow? You just press triangle every time you see a monster, and then you kill it by other means. Don't you do the same thing with ice bow? And in that response, I would say yes, but Hokuto can roll certain stuff where it will actually kill things for you. So for example, you can press triangle with a Hokuto bow, and if it has monsters explode when they die, monsters catch fire when they die, anything that's marked by Hokuto will do that. Whatever that effect is, the Hokuto bow basically extends that across the map. And that to me is better than ice bow. Now, say for example, if ice bow, you hit a target and then everything else on the screen gets like kind of a, maybe not slowed, but it gets slow enemies. I don't know how it will work. Like, yeah, frozen targets often have an effect when they die. That's true. Either it's like slow thaw when it dies, bleed when it's unfrozen, all kinds of stuff like that. That's fine, but when you're in 4 BC and you have arbiters like shooting at you from other angles, and you have that knife thrower behind the failed experiment, the thaw is only so good. The thaw doesn't take care of the arbiters that are above you. Whereas this thing, where you get the explosive remains, could actually start messing with everything else on the screen. Yeah, always spread even without affix, that's true. It's just with the affix, the mark now does stuff. So it's not just that everything else deals bonus damage, they're also afflicted with whatever disease we got. Oh, what's the last tier? The last tier is unused. And sorry, chat is kind of in the way, I see that. Let me help you by making it more in the way. Sorry, Gucci. So what that is are items that I don't have enough experience with. There we go, perfect. Items I don't have enough experience with to judge it fairly, or an item that you can't judge fairly because it's not really created equally to everything else. And I am doing well today, thank you. How are you doing? I'm okay with keeping this as a B. As a matter of fact, having these two items together are actually wicked fun, and if you haven't tried it yet, I would highly recommend doing it. Yeah, I wish I could actually unlock some weapons, Kirby, but I don't get scrolls. Mega unlucky. Okay, so Ice Crossbow. Now, back in the day, Ice Crossbow for me used to be down here. Insta sell. Like, I don't even care what it does, I sell it every time. But that was the V from last year. This year's different. I actually don't mind Ice Crossbow that much. Insta pickup, obviously not. Like, I'm not gonna just pick it up every time I see it. I pick it up only in very specific circumstances. Usable on its own? Technically it is, but I say that, and again, like, you could say Hokuto technically is if you have certain affixes to it, but it's not. You can hold down square to get the crit, but chances are that's not gonna kill a failed experiment. I think we've tried it where you press the triangle one time and then you hold down the triangle, it doesn't kill it. But if you spam triangle, which just like constantly freezes the target, it's actually surprisingly effective. But that makes your fight time really long, and that's kind of dangerous to fight for that long. So in my opinion, you need a second item in there to make it actually good. Possibly even one of these two guys. Possibly even this guy down here. That's spoilers though, so I'm not gonna get to that. So, unfortunately, I can't judge this thing on bosses because I haven't gotten as far as to killing a boss with it. But what the basic idea is, and this thing can pierce too, so that actually makes it even better. You have whatever your enemies are in front of you. You have an ice crossbow and whatever throwing item. Hopefully it's a Molotov or a Boomerang. Anything else that's a throwing item is probably not gonna work. But what you do is you throw out your first hit and then you spam the ice crossbow shot. Whatever's in front of you will actually stay frozen, and then you'll actually kill it with either the fire bottle or the boomerang. And it's surprisingly effective. Now against bosses, yeah, the diminishing returns on even something like Concierge sucks. I completely agree with that. In that case, and probably Timekeeper is the real like offender here. Hopefully by then you have actual gear that can kill it, but technically you're supposed to swap to holding down the button and dealing the crits. Now, is that good? Probably not. Compared to heavy crossbow, it's definitely nowhere near that. So I'm willing to give this a try, but how many points did we lose? 1 for insta pickup, 1 for usable on its own, and I guess it loses 1 for bosses, so that also puts it in this situational tree, where these items are usually good if it's paired with something else. Which makes me think I should put this down here, but that's a lot of items in C. I don't want to have everything in C just because it's range. So, I know a lot of people don't like this. If I can get some games in today with Ice Crossbow, I'll definitely show you guys how I've been using it. Because I actually think it's surprisingly effective. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to move stuff up and down, that's for sure. Okay, the rocket launcher. The Chris Redfield special. Shoutouts to my Resident Evil 5 players who've been playing that game for probably 20 years. So, Explosive Crossbow got a buff. If you guys haven't seen it, it has 4 ammo. It does a really powerful knockback. Well, not Wave of Denial powerful, but just enough to stop a failed experiment. And it's a little faster, so it's a little more spammable. Now, me personally, I have played this weapon a lot, and I'm starting to kinda not like it anymore. Only because if you don't one-shot stuff, you run into some real dangerous territory. If you can't two-shot it, you're in even more trouble. So, the example I give, failed experiment, you see him, you shoot. He jumps at you, you shoot. If he's not dead by then, something else may appear and be ready to actually fight you too. So this, you really need the latest loot level, but if you don't, but if you do, it's pretty strong. Oh, so you mean like, so what Kirby is saying is that if you keep this weapon up to date, so for example, if you get this to drop in your 30 kill door, it's probably very strong. But if you don't upgrade this by your next biome, then you're gonna fall off pretty hard. And there were people, I had this discussion in Discord too, talking about like linear damage. Like, what do you mean the item falls off? Items don't fall off as long as you increase your stats. Everything else just deals more damage. What do you mean by an item falling off later? And what that means is, Marksman Bow, when you one-shot stuff, is awesome. Marksman Bow, when you two-shot stuff, it's okay. Like, it's not terrible. But a Marksman Bow, when you 3-shot the enemy, gives it a chance to actually walk up to you. And all of a sudden, the Marksman Bow doesn't crit anymore, and you're actually in trouble. That's what we mean by it falls off later in the game if you don't keep up with it. Regardless of you increasing your stats, because it has a very specific window to kill something, if it doesn't kill in that window, you're gonna be in trouble. It still won't be in range by the 3rd shot. So, failed experiments jumping, yeah, the 3rd shot will probably keep it at bay, you're right. But what the problem is, eventually, having to shoot things 3 times mean that other things might show up. You might have a runner come down the hallway that sees you. Or you might have Lil Homie, the stalker, see you from like up above and teleport down to you. Or you might have a bombardier that's walking the path above you, notices that you're trying to shoot 3 rockets, at enemies and decides to just drop a bomb on you. So it's the time to kill that I worry with. Now, I'm not gonna drop it down to a C because, as we said, this thing can get really strong. Like, it can win games on its own. But if you aren't keeping up with it, it can be kind of bad. In my opinion, at least. And that's me. Like, I think maybe I just have a bad rap with this weapon, but I have hours behind it. So unless I don't know how to play this game, which is 100% possible, I gotta have this thing as a B. And I know people want to see it higher than that, but I have to. I can't. I know some people are gonna look at this though. The quick bow being higher than the explosive, that's the real tilter right there. That's how you get the tryhards in your chat. Ready to go off on you, ready to present you with numbers. I say bring them on, bring on the tryhards. I'm a tryhard too. Elitist. All three of those need to be B tier. You're probably right. But like I said, I'm gonna test it. I'm gonna test it and then actually... Yeah, that's what we were talking about, Gucci. If you hold down the button, it does more shots than you could ever do spamming. So, next weapon is probably the second S rank weapon for range. This thing does everything these three items by themselves do. So, okay, this is, again, we were talking yesterday, how do I distinguish these three from each other? To me, they all do the same thing. They crit after some kind of condition. This thing technically can always crit. I mean, if you're like me and you're not good at the game, yeah, you're gonna lose out on some crits every once in a while. But 56 versus 43 versus 50, like, it does more damage than both of these items. The crit, yeah, so the crit does just a little bit less than this thing, but it's not terrible. Accounting for, like, the kind of gameplay you have to have using a marksman bow, and 4BC that is, 4BC and higher, I'm pretty sure this has to stay in S. And this is actually, this is so I don't get the hate mail for people who hate this thing right here. I'm gonna keep this thing as an S so that they say, well, we'll give V the pass. He wants to have quick bow as an A, that's okay. As long as he keeps this thing as an S, no hate mail today. I'm gonna close my Twitter app. I'm gonna delete that post on the Reddit. He's fine today. So, I mean, what else do we have to say about that? You can duck and fire this. You can jump and fire it. It just requires, like, some brain power. And yes, like I said, every once in a while we don't have the brain power to, you know, actually use it. But the base DPS is still higher than the equivalent. Yeah, plus with the piercing, definitely really good. Gotta go post. Gotta go get mad on Reddit. That's me every Tuesday. No, today's Tuesday. Every Thursday, Friday. When I'm not online. Alright, I don't have anything else to say about Nerves of Steel. You guys know, it's a busted item. Well, maybe not busted. It's just really, really good at what it does. And it's very usable. Don't really know what Reddit is, don't worry. Yeah, keep it that way, Tarma. Save yourself some brain cells. No offense to my Redditors out there. You guys have plenty of brain cells. I love all you guys. Let's move on. Moving on. Alchemy Carbine. This item, I used to be a hater of the Alchemy Carbine. And then I started using it, and I really liked the Alchemy Carbine. And then I got tired of Alchemy Carbine, and I decided not to use it anymore. And then I think it got nerfed only slightly in 1.2. Only because I think poison doesn't last as long as it used to. Let me see if I can pull up the patch notes. Okay, so this is, I think, the only real nerf it got. Was that the poison no longer interrupts enemy attacks. And what that means is that when you're staring down a bomber who's flying at you, back in the day you used to be able to just press triangle, have poison all over the map, and then anything that's coming up to you will actually pause every once in a while because they're vomiting or something, I don't know. But conceptually, like, it makes sense. It's poison. It doesn't, well, I guess if it doesn't want to be in the poison anymore, it would try to get out of the poison ASAP. But these are zombies, they don't know any better. So you hit them with the poison, and they stop in their tracks. But apparently that was too strong, so someone in the community said that has to go. So now it's gone. So that makes it only slightly weaker than it used to be. It's not, you know, a deal breaker. It's still a very good item. But I can't just grab it every single time. Even though it can kill most things by itself, in 4 BC, just sometimes it gets really dangerous killing things with only an Alchemic Carbine. Alright, so insta pickup is a no. Usable on its own, technically it is. It can kill things, so long as you're really paying attention. Usable in biomes, yes. Usable on bosses, yes. But the attack pattern, though. So my gripe with this weapon, and I think the best evidence I have of that is against conjunctivitis, where I have these tentacles all over the ground. I fire out the missile, and the poison, like the trail of poison that follows the missile, actually doesn't stick around. Not great on bosses, like trying to get decent damage on the giant's eye. That's true, it's just gonna make that fight 10 times longer. I think it's still relatively safe because you're constantly killing the hands. But on the final phase, when you start slamming down crystals from the sky, you end up in that section for years, and that's kind of annoying. But I like how it interacts with every other boss except conjunctivitis, specifically because the trail of poison, I feel like it doesn't last long enough. I'm not gonna say that's a fault of the boss. It's probably a balance decision, because if you can imagine just shooting a poison dart down a hallway and the entire hallway just stays toxic that entire time, that's probably too strong. But I would hate for this thing to be like mega balanced, where it's never like the broken option. Even the affix that you guys think makes it broken, which is the one where enemies that are poisoned will bleed, I believe in testing it only gets 1 stack of bleed per missile. So you shoot it once, it gets poisoned, the poison makes it bleed, but only 1 stack, regardless of how long it stays poisoned. Am I just going over ranged weapons today? Yes. I'll post... Wow, I always forget about the music. Let me find the tweet for melee. So then again, sometimes the affix is super broken, where you get like bonus damage to bleeding target or bonus damage to poison. That kind of stuff is insane. But when you don't get that, I feel like it's not as great. So that's why I feel like I gotta keep it as just a B. What's my opinion on Shovel? That's the link to the tier list for Melee, so you can see where Shovel is on that list. Yeah, so I'm gonna keep this thing as a B. It's good enough to be just like a Molotov. If I had my way, it would be down here. But I know there's a lot of people who've won games with Alchemy Carbine, so I'm just gonna assume that I suck with the item. So I'm gonna keep it as a B. I don't want that hate mail. Alright, I think we have time for 2 more. Untiered should not be an I don't know tier. You mean the one down here, unused? I mean, yeah, I can make predictions on how good these items are, but I feel like that's unfair to the item. Alright, I know you guys aren't insta-picking up Lightning Bolt. If anyone out there is instantly grabbing this anytime they see it, please let me know. Because... And I've had some that deal like quadruple damage. And even then, I'm thinking to myself, like... Is that the right thing to grab? Probably not. Usable on its own, yes. Obviously, it can kill stuff. But Biomes, I gotta take a point off. And to explain to you guys why, and you would think that Biomes are the best place for the Lightning Bolt. Like, clearly it's made to kill zombies. But I have to deduct a whole point from this thing just because of fighting elites. For those who don't know, elites spawn a zombie mob. The zombie mob does nothing important. All it does is walk up to you and try to punch you. The lightning bolt will actually target whatever's closest. If it's a zombie, it targets the zombie. And it's actually awful when that happens. Like, if you have a bombardier who's constantly throwing bombs at you, constantly jumping away from you, or the thing in Slumbering Sanctuary, the floating monster that shoots the energy ball at you, if you get close to it, it teleports away from you. If you get that thing, and you have a lightning bolt, you're probably dead. Well, you can run away, of course. It'll chase you down, but that is probably the worst fight in the game, is this versus a ranged elite. And I gotta deduct the whole point for that. If it went through the zombie mob, it would be fine. Lightning Bolt is C or D. Hi, by the way, Asunder. Good to see you there. Yeah, so against everything that anything that the explosive crossbow can kill, this can kill, except elites. So explosive crossbow's bullet actually goes through zombies when you're fighting elites. It does not stop and collide with the first zombie. Lightning bolt does, so that's why I gotta deduct a point just because it can't kill elites. And I don't really measure elites the same way I measure bosses, because an elite can get one-shotted. Bosses can't. So those are two completely different like levels of gameplay to me. Am I not feeling Carbine? I'm honestly not. I mean, I've kind of been a Carbine hater, so I'm literally just keeping this as a B rather than a C, just to prevent the hate mail from showing up in my inbox. Atrocious windup, doesn't sustain power over time. It does get buffed in 1.2 Asunder. So once the new update drops for you guys, definitely give it a try and see if you still like it. Usable on bosses. Against like Concierge and Conjunctivitis is actually pretty good. But honestly, I would be kind of scared to take this into Timekeeper. Maybe even Hand of the King. And again, I don't even really care about Hand of the King that much. To me, the real signifier for if it's good or not is if it can kill Timekeeper and Giant. I feel like this can probably kill the Giant, but Timekeeper, and maybe I just don't have the experience. I need a boss rush mode. But I feel like you die unless you have a wolf trap or something like that. It's pretty good versus all but Timekeeper. Like I said, I would love to see this thing in action against Giant. I feel like just off the top of my head, it probably does a good job. Perfect weapon because it can work with any build. Yeah, so I did have to deduct points for not being able to kill things on its own, even though a lot of times it can, but it's just better when used with something else. It's in a weird spot for me. I can't justify putting it higher, and I'm not allowed to put it any lower, so it's sitting at a B right now. I would take a Molotov like half the time, not every time. Alright, last one, Fire Blast. Yeah, so the tweet I made today was also something like, I don't use ranged items at all, and I desperately need help to do this ranking. So you guys are really the experts here. My expertise, not really in ranged items, but hey, I'm trying my best here. Been watching T channels, YouTube drama. Dude, that's actually the worst. There's all kinds of drama going on right now in the YouTube world. I definitely try to distance myself from all of it. I value the little brain cells I have left. Yeah, so people like you, people like Cosminder, definitely good feedback. I love all the feedback that I get from you guys. Alright, so Fire Blast. This is gonna be my last one before I start the game up. So if you get Fire Blast in Prison Quarters and it's rank S, it can honestly kill everything in Prison Quarters. Why do you have nerves heavy? Yeah, so those are definitely, and I'll probably talk about it as I play the game. So they are my S rank items so far. This thing though, it will kill pretty much everything in Prison Quarters, and then as soon as you get out of Prison Quarters, it falls off instantly. Like, it's not even funny how hard this thing falls off. And what I mean by that is, in Promenade, you have a runner that's running up to you. If you don't breach it with the Fire Blast, you'll die. And even if you do breach it with the Fire Blast, if you don't kill it before it unstuns, you probably die. Now, if you can get enough tactics or brutality to make it so you can kill a runner or like a bomber, for example, before it gets an attack off, it's actually good. But without that, it's really not good. The opposite of good. Usable on its own, I say yes. It does crit in oil, so technically you can say it goes live with an item. So I should honestly take a point off just for that fact. Yeah, that's probably why it falls off so hard. But I'm gonna like deduct half a point for the oil. Only because it really can kill stuff without the oil, but the oil probably prevents it from being trash. Hey Tattoo, how are you doing today? long lockout after and the channel time. Again, I like it because it can breach, but if you can't kill the target during the breach, you're probably in trouble. Usable on bosses. Again, I almost want to give it half a point. So instant pickup, half a point keeps it at a B. I can't keep this thing as a B. No, it does breach. What I was saying is that if you can't kill your target during the breach, you're probably in trouble. Which is basically runners and bombers. Oh yeah, by the way, so I did mostly get this idea from Asunder. Thank you for posting that, Asunder. He did a tier list for 1.1 that actually got some really good feedback, and I kind of used that same idea. Oh yeah, it was 1.0. You're right, I'm sorry. So 1.1 just dropped for PC, and while everyone was talking about 1.1, he decided, you know what, let's take it back a little bit with a 1.0 tier list. By breach, do you mean interrupt? Because pretty sure it doesn't. -1 breach value? Hey, we'll try it out today. I don't mind. Yeah, base breach 0, so it doesn't have bonus breach. So yeah, we'll definitely, well, if I get it to drop, we'll try it out. I don't think I can justify having this thing as a B. I think at default, it has to be a C. But our C rank items are kinda growing real fast. What I can say is it's not a D. Yeah, Asunder, I always start at the top, and then as it loses points for this stuff here, we just drop it one by one until it gets to the bottom. Until it hits F. That's how we do it. Alright, so let's... If I hit save, do you guys see stuff? Yeah, you will. So let this soak in for a little bit while I pull the game up. Is Ice Bow bad? I mean, it does its job, it does free stuff, but I will almost always grab a different item over it. Which is how it dropped all the way down to a D. Not only are we thinking about how good the item is just from the 5 points on the list, after all of that, it has to be a matter of, will I take something else over this 99% of the time? And if that's true, then I gotta put that item above whatever that is. But just as a recap for what we've done already, we have so far 2 S rank items. The heavy crossbow, which I'm 100% in agreement with, and then the Nosferatu, the Nos button, which is really chat's favorite ranged weapon. I do think it's extremely good. I'm very happy with the S rank placement. I don't pick it up every single time, because sometimes I honestly don't feel like playing Nerves of Steel. But when I do grab it, it feels like the right choice every time. So I think it deserves to be in the S rank. Yesterday we did have a lot of games with these 3. Triplex, Marksman, and Infantry Bow. And I'm honestly okay with all 3 of them being A rank, even Infantry Bow. Now, Infantry Bow suffers from having low ammo, but I really like the gameplay that's behind it, which is basically like as long as you're fighting something, it probably does the right damage every single time. Unlike Marksman Bow, where chances are you're dealing minimum damage. So almost like Nerves of Steel, where you're always dealing a crit, Infantry Bow, you can actually always deal a crit. if you try hard enough. Compared to Marksman Bow, where sometimes you don't even have an option to crit. This thing, however, Quick Bow, I still have it as an A just because conceptually I feel like it should work. I just haven't actually tried it over the last 2 days. So if I see a Quick Bow drop today, I will use it. And if it's bad, it will drop to a B. These guys are all B because they are technically good enough to kill stuff on its own. Just sometimes they're just better if you have something else. Excluding Explosive Crossbow. Explosive is good on its own. It'll do its job on its own. But if you don't keep it leveled up, when you stop one-shotting things, it feels awful. And that's obviously unfair to say that, hey, unless I'm one-shotting enemies, it's a trash item. Can't do that. Then we have a bunch of weapons in the C rank. These are almost all situational weapons. Some are situationally good, like ice and lightning. And some are borderline always bad. But technically, there's nothing really wrong with them. It's just I would rather have any of this stuff over these. We do still need some practice with the Electro Whip though. The Electric Eels. If I can get a game with it, I am more than happy to try it. Then we have Ice Bow sitting at the D. The only D on the whole team is the Ice Bow. Hey, Jin. And then finally, Ice Shard as an insta-sell. And technically, I did use Ice Blast, the Frost Blast, Frost Nova. I did use a legendary version of this yesterday, and it honestly did not feel that bad. So I think I'm gonna bump it up to a D, because just like the Ice Bow, it's good if it has the affixes behind it. But because it didn't, well, in yesterday's case it did. It had some really good affixes. It helped me clear caverns. As soon as I sold it in caverns, I started taking hits. So that's how you know that the Frost Blast was actually doing stuff. Alright, and then we have an unused section down here. These are items that I just don't have enough hours to really rank them fairly. So, because of that, they go right here in the unused tier. Perfect. Alright, so let's start off with the next item in the list, Ice Shards. As you guys know, Ice Shards used to be the most busted item ever created, ever known to mankind. You see Ice Shards and you automatically decide, I don't care what build I'm using right now, we're running Ice Shards. If you don't get Ice Shards, you're actually trolling. Or at least that's what chat tells me. Chat says, V, if you don't get those Ice Shards, you're trolling and we're gonna unfollow. And I'm like, okay, I guess I have to use Ice Shards. They did get nerfed in 1.2 though, so they really aren't as good as they used to be. Objectively, they are not. I'm gonna say they are not trash though. They lose 1 point for being an insta pickup because there's a lot of instances where you just leave the Ice Shard on the ground. It's almost like a gameplay thing, but Ice Shard themselves kind of do the same thing as these in just a support role. But Ice Shards actually deal damage too, a lot of damage if you have the oil behind it. So that also makes them technically not usable on their own. You will not, if you pick up Ice Shards and a shield when you first start in prison quarters, chances are you can't kill anything. You're basically gonna parry stuff to death. Which is fine, you can do that. I'm not saying to not get Ice Shards as your starting item. Just think about possibly grabbing the melee weapon instead And then if you find a second ranged throwing item, then you can get the Ice Shard. Or get the melee plus the Ice Shard, so you can actually kill something. And then decide what you're going to do with the Ice Shard later. Usable in biomes only if you pair it with other stuff. Usable on bosses. So the nerf that they did to the Ice Shards was they gave it 4 ammo. Once you use all 4, it will actually reload itself after a little while, but it takes a decent amount of time. Firefox actually did something weird, so I kind of wanted to see. Huh. Alright, anyway. On bosses, like once you get to a boss, if you're actually still using an Ice Shard, you probably have oil and stuff behind it. And to me, it's technically not that bad. But I almost feel like I can't justify having Ice Shard. Actually, no, I can. Like, I know a lot of people think the Ice Shards are a trash item. But I honestly think it deserves to stay as a B. Like, just as good as Molotov. But Molotov can kill stuff on its own. But when paired with the Molotov, it's actually not half bad. So, I kind of want to keep Ice Shards as a B. It is nerfed, but I think it's still actually usable. As strange as that is. Pyro, on the other hand, also got nerfs. So is it still an insta pickup? Absolutely not. Is it usable on its own? It is, but there's one problem with Pyro now, is that the first couple of hits typically won't kill anything in 4BC and higher. Now remember, this list is a 4BC plus list, but for some reason, if you grab this thing in prison quarters and you find a failed experiment, for example, the first 3 shots are not going to kill that failed experiment. You need all 4 shots to land, which is easy. Like, it's a very easy weapon to use, but thinking about the time to kill, even versus the Molotov, I feel like a Molotov could actually out-kill Pyro. As weird as that is. And it also doesn't lock you out of rolling, because there's an animation tied to Pyro. So I gotta actually at least drop half a point for Biomes. Bosses, I think it's fine. But the attack pattern. Pyro is faster and has more range. So it is... The range definitely is important, but in 4BC plus, range is interesting. So, a lot of these weapons up here, Triplex, Marksman Bow, kill stuff at a range just like a Pyro would, but usually in half the time. Usually 1 missile from this stuff, maybe 2, will kill whatever is at a distance. If you don't kill whatever that thing is, if it's a failed experiment, if it's a bomber, if it's a runner, if it's the assassin, the knife thrower, there's so many things in 4BC plus that just want to run you down. Like, they will literally just chase you down. And I feel like Pyro doesn't stop them from doing that. This other stuff will. Obviously these 2 won't, because they just rely on dealing damage regardless of what the enemy is. But Pyro, I am having a real love-hate relationship with this thing now. With a little bit more hate than the love. So I honestly compare Pyro with Flame Blast. And I know people are gonna hate this, and that's why I'm putting them right next to each other. I honestly would take Molotov over both of these almost any day of the week. Unless I have some like crazy oil build. Or I guess if I'm speed running. If I'm like a speed runner and I'm doing 0 BC speed runs, then yeah, I'm using Pyro. But in 4 BC, I honestly have more success with this. As sad as that is. Now, if you want hate mail, and this is the funny part, because the C list is just growing. I'm gonna have every item listed as a C, except Heavy Crossbow and Nerves of Steel. And I feel like that's literally... I can't explain myself any better. Alright, so let's move on. And again, like, as I'm going through this, I'm gonna be bumping things up and bumping these down, depending on if I would rather have this item over a different item. Yeah, Pyro with no oil. That puts it into usable on its own territory, where it doesn't require something to make it live, make it like a good weapon. And technically with oil, you're locked out of half the DPS for this thing. Alright, so Boomerang. Again, Boomerang used to be my top OP item. Best items of all 2018. And then it got nerfed. So now we cannot have it as an S. Literally, once it hit the patch notes, no longer an S. Like, within minutes. You judge Ice Shard with oil or without. I judged it. So I judged it without oil for like the first 2 biomes. So it kind of sucks because Ice Shard, you can't really kill stuff on its own. You would be pairing it with something else. So I almost compare it with Hokuto's bow. But even then, I feel like if I were to have oil, and then one of these two drop between Ice Shard and Pyro, I feel like I would take the Ice Shards over the Pyro. Which is awful to say, and maybe I just don't have the hours to back it up. But I think if I had an oil grenade, I wouldn't take Pyro, I would take Ice Shards instead. And it's okay. I love the fact that people obviously are playing the game their way. There's no right or wrong way to play Dead Cells. I say that all the time. But I love that people have their way to play it. Like, if they got the oil, then yeah, they're taking Pyro all day. Like, they can't wait to play Pyro if they had the oil. Alright, so Boomerang. Boomerang, definitely not an insta pickup anymore. Usable on its own, it is not. So, Boomerang does technically kill stuff. You can throw a Boomerang in prison quarters, and it will kill a failed experiment. But the problem is that that's not enough. Like, that can't get you out of prison quarters unless you plan to stay in there for 10 minutes. Once you get a second weapon, though, like Ice Crossbow, the Boomerang is actually kind of decent. But even then, it's not that great. Like, it's like ambient damage. It's like having an owl behind you, except you actually have to throw it. And it takes up a slot that would have had a shield. And it's not usable on really any of this other stuff. Like, I wouldn't take a Boomerang and pair it with anything up here. I will only be pairing this with this stuff or this stuff. Usable on bosses, I honestly have not had a Boomerang to last me all the way to Concierge. And that, again, means I need hours. I need just nights of nothing but Boomerang, where we get to the giant, I throw the Boomerang, and I decide, is this a trash item or not? Can it kill the giant? I honestly feel like if you fought the giant with these two items together, you could kill it. I kind of feel like these two items can kill the giant. Maybe even these two, but this is like a long fight. These two, I don't know if giant resists fire. I feel like he does. So I think out of principle, you gotta have Boomerang as a C. Only because just like this other stuff, it's way too situational to have as a B rank. Like, I don't call Hokuto Bow situational. If you land Hokuto, it's probably gonna do its job. If you land Kunai, it possibly won't do its job. So that is why Hokuto is ranked higher than Boomerang. I mean, yeah, Boomerang and Kunai right now. Unfortunately, I don't think Boomerang is so bad it's a D rank. But maybe I should put it as a D. Only because, like, you're using this thing in pair with other weapons. And technically, it's not the Boomerang that's actually killing the stuff. It's probably these other items that are really doing it. The Boomerang's just there to take up a slot. But I wouldn't go so far as to make it an F. I think technically D is okay. Until we get more hours, we can bump it up to a C. Alright. The boy. Now, I'll admit, I actually don't think I have Boy's Axe unlocked. Drop some ground shakers. So yeah, so once the new beta dropped, everyone lost all of their progress. And previously, we were unlocking Boy's Axe every single patch. Just because it was a lot of games I was playing. So I would just unlock Boy Axe all the time, but right now I actually don't have it. A lot of people actually feel like Boy Axe is a busted item. It doesn't pierce, so you do have to actually fight everything 1v1. But if you think about this versus, say, Marksman Bow, a lot of people feel like it's really good. Conceptually, I think the only points I can take off of it is maybe like half a point for bosses and half a point for attack pattern. I think they did some kind of diminishing returns on this. Let's see if we can search out the patch notes. For some reason, I feel like there was a build out there where people did double Boy Axe. Oh, they actually fixed it. Fixed Boy Axe diminishing returns. See, I don't know if that means it now stops working after X uses, or if that's how it used to be in the past and they got rid of it. So I think that really determines where Boy Axe sits on the list. I may have to actually put it as a B. B for boy, until someone comes into chat and tells me... Actually, no. I think if I had Quick Bow on the floor and a Boy Axe on the floor, I would take Boy Axe over Quick. Maybe even over Marksman. So I actually think I want to keep it as an A rank. I don't know if it's strong enough to be an S. I think I need someone to tell me if the diminishing returns are implemented or not. But again, I don't have a whole lot of time with this weapon. I know it pops stuff. I've used it in Daily Challenge, and that thing actually pops monsters. So I like it. As soon as I unlock it, you guys are gonna see me use it. Magic Missile. Now, Magic Missile. This was the Gallic gun back in the day for all my DBZ fans. I used to love Magic Missile so much. They did some slight nerfs to it. Gotta know more about Quick Bow. Yeah, so I'll talk about all three. So, admittedly, I haven't done a lot of hours of ranged builds. I don't know how, but if you look at my wins from 0 to 4 BC, not a lot of ranged builds in there. But thinking from like my experience of playing the game, Marksman I like for the fishing gameplay. Like you're in a long hallway, you're pressing square as you walk and just hoping to pop stuff. In a 4 BC environment though, that doesn't always work because you'll end up with like an arbiter or something that's above you, and you have to actually jump up there into melee range and fight the arbiter with a marksman bow. Infantry Bow does the opposite of that, where you cannot fish for monsters, but what you can do is rush something down into melee range and two-shot it. Compared to like one-shotting it at a range, and then if it gets too close, now you don't have an item anymore. Quick Bow is technically supposed to be the middle ground of that, where the Quick Bow kills stuff at range and kill stuff in melee range at significantly more shots. So say like 4 shots to kill compared to 2 shots. And I feel like if I were to like have to fight a slasher or a runner or even like a golem in Slumbering Sanctuary, I think all of these kind of do the same thing. You just have to do the fight differently for each. Compared to, say, Bow and Endless Quiver, where if you find a slasher or a golem or I forget the third thing I said, failed experiment, I guess, this thing is probably not going to help you at all. It's probably going to get you killed, compared to these 3 items where you can at least fight it. You can kind of say the same things down here, but there's a lot of instances where these 5 items cannot kill those monsters. Except maybe Explosive Crossbow. So I really want to get some games in today with a quick, because I really want to find a reason to make this a B rank. And if we do, then great, I'll knock it down a point. But until then, I kind of have to keep it as an A until the item itself proves me wrong. Alright, so Magic Missile. I honestly do pick up Magic Missile every time I see it. Unless I have these 2 S rank items, I honestly will take a Magic Missile regardless of where I am. Caverns, ossuary, prison depths, I don't care. I'm taking that Magic Missile. Usable on its own, it is. It will do whatever is in the description, regardless of what the weapon says. I mean, regardless of the situation. You don't need a mutation. You don't need ammo. You don't need support. You don't need Tranquilo. It works. Now, the only problem with it is that the DPS is technically kinda low, and sometimes it takes too long to kill something. Like, it's actually less DPS than Fire Blast. Let's click into this thing. No details. I was hoping to see like the breach statistics on this thing. But I honestly feel like it's better than Fire Blast. But I will deduct a point because you have to do a lot of shots to kill anything. And like I said, it's Gallic Gun. Gallic Gun isn't like the final flash. It's not a single energy bolt that just kills everything in front of you. It's multiple shots. And if you land multiple shots, it actually does kill things. But it's trying to hit an enemy and then another enemy gets in the way and you're not critting. Yeah, so to important things. So one important thing for quick bow is you do need to hold the button down. You do not spam auto attack. You hold it down to deal maximum DPS. So that's step one. I know we were talking about that the other day, so just in case anyone missed that, that's a very important detail that you need to get the most out of quick bow. The second piece of it is, yes, if you have a failed experiment in front of you and a knife thrower behind that, you're definitely gonna get some scary fights with a quick bow. So your targeting selection has to be immaculate. Like, you need to be straight up double lift, C9 sneaky, whatever you want to call it, with a marksman bow. If you start like splitting your damage between every target, you're guaranteed gonna die. And that's probably the hardest part about the marksman bow. That's why I like the NOS button up here is good, because it can always crit. Like, yes, there is a requirement of the player to crit, but technically it can always crit. But with the quick bow, if you are like a platinum ADC, you can actually do some nasty stuff with a quick bow. And I'm telling you, let me get 10 of these and give you guys 10 runs of quick bow, and hopefully I can change some minds, open some eyes, and open some brains as I'm opening up brains in Dead Cells with a quick bow. Or I'm gonna grab quick bow and I'm gonna instantly die with it and drop it like way down. I did see your tier list. So Forza is down here, right? This is you, right, Forza? It would be cool to see it in action. Yeah, I hope I see a quick bow drop. You have explosive crossbow on S is one of the best range for you. What's my thought process to make it a B? So my thought process is twofold. And oh, I love this discussion so much. Okay, so it's twofold. Number one is that I value heavy crossbow over it. So because I will pick up heavy crossbow over explosive, it's automatically an A. So that's rule number one. In order to make it into the S rank for me, and again, this is my list, you guys are 100% welcome to have your own list. If you do, post it to Twitter, at me on Twitter, at Veedotme, tell me, hey, your list is trash, this is the real list, and I will definitely respond to it. Hey, Tattoo. Alright, so it automatically loses a point for that reason. The next reason why it loses a point is because of, in my opinion, time to kill. The amount of time it takes for me to see a failed experiment and for that failed experiment to be gone off my screen. So in the first couple biomes, and if you have the stats to go behind this thing, it will kill failed experiments in like 2 shots, which is awesome. When you start getting into 3 shots territory with explosive, then you actually run into trouble, because you have other stuff, like the knife thrower that's behind it, throwing kunai at you while it's taking you 3 plus bullets, 3 plus rockets to kill that failed experiment. Or if you're in prison depths, for example, I think prison depths is probably the best example, where that slasher is coming for you. And if you can't kill that slasher in the first 3 bullets, you're probably gonna die. And like, you can say that's something similar with quick bow and infantry. Infantry, I kind of already used it yesterday, and I am perfectly okay with it being an A rank. Quick bow, until I use it, I'm gonna leave it at an A, but I feel like it's gonna suffer possibly the same fate as explosive, where we have not enough shots to kill the target before something else teleports on top of me, or the Arbiter that's shooting me from up above decides it wants to play some dead cells and kills me. But again, like, I've seen people say they love Explosive so much they pick it up every time they see it. Explosive is their custom mode item. Like, I am perfectly okay with that. I love the discussion that we're having about it. Feels way easier for you since you don't get locked after firing a shot. Locked as in, like, the heavy crossbow? Is that what you mean by locked? Okay, so Magic Missile. I want to make this thing a B, but I feel like I don't have enough reason to keep it as an A. I mean, I don't have enough reason to make it a B. I would love to see Magic Missile in B range, but I feel like it kind of deserves to stay in A until further notice. Yeah, the lockout for Explosive isn't as punishing. I'm kind of in agreement with that. And I had some games, I had some really good Explosive crossbows. I had the legendary Explosive crossbow with double damage on it. Felt awesome. I loved that thing until I jumped into lava and died. But that's not the crossbow's fault, that's my fault. So yeah, the Magic Missile, I know a lot of people don't like it anymore after it got a couple of nerfs, but I think I still don't mind the gameplay. It's the flotation is the most important part. Like, if you don't play it Vegeta style, where you literally float in the air and shoot down, then yeah, it's gonna be a bad item. It's all about being able to float. Just like Electric Whip back in the day, you used to be able to get massive hang time with the Electro Whip. That's now what Magic Missile does. Yeah, Jen, I am in love with Heavy. Definitely one of my favorite items in the game. So yeah, unfortunately, I don't have a lot to say about Magic Missile. Oh, I actually skipped Javelin. But I think it's okay to stay as an A. It's not a bad item, and I have Balance Blade as an A, as a matter of fact. Oh, I should also say Forza. This is ranged only, so I think in your list you have, yeah, you have items mixed. So I actually did split my stuff between melee and range. So that's another thing. If I had everything mixed together, then I would definitely have to maneuver stuff around. Yeah, I definitely want to get some games in with Magic Missile today. If I can see games with these two today, I would be happy. Alright, but Javelin. Javelin, Javelin, Javelin. I am not blind today. Wow, I'm finding these so fast. Okay, so you guys know Javelin, busted item. Totally one of the best items ever made by Motion Twin. In practice, we have had some situations where that Javelin has actually got me killed. Now, back in the day, and Javelin actually got nerfed. So back in the day, weeks ago, which feels like forever, you used to be able to run ammo, so ×2 ammo on Javelin, use double Javelin, and basically get free clears in biomes. Like, you just run down the biome, just like double Boomerang, and you just spam Javelins, and stuff just dies without you ever even realizing it was there. And then they got rid of the ammo, and now I feel like it's down here. And I don't know how I feel about that. So you can't Well, yes, you can instantly pick it up, but only if you have a plan to go behind it. Like, you can't just get Javelin plus a shield and expect to get, like, the timed door at the end of a biome. It needs something else, like a grenade, or, I don't know. Like, you can't even use corrupted power and just kill stuff. It's super unfortunate. Yeah, and not even every biome. You're right, Jin. There's some biomes where Javelin is actually thrown into the garbage can every time you press the button. I really... Like, if I could give feedback to the devs, it would be... Make Javelin great again. Like, we can't have Javelin sitting at a C. This item's way too awesome to be as a C. I don't know how they can make this good without it being broken, though. Like, maybe... I'm trying to think of a way to not have double ammo and still make it good. Like, maybe if the snared enemy was stunned for longer, almost like Ice Bow and Frost, like, make it a guaranteed stun for an X amount of seconds. Less damage and ammo. See, I think it'll be broken. I think if you give this any more than 1 ammo, literally the busted item of 2019. Except maybe against bosses. So it sucks against bosses, but free clears on biomes, I'll find a weapon somewhere. Hey Maui, how you doing today? We gotta do something about Javelin. Yeah, no bonus on wall. See, I feel like, to me, and I would hate for it to be like, oh, if it's in oil, it does something great. I can't think of a situation where we'll nerf the damage on the Javelin, but then without a wall, it somehow deals more damage. Like, maybe against CC targets, like frozen or snare targets. But then the damage will have to, like, go way up for it to actually be usable with an Ice Bow. Like, if you did Ice Bow plus Javelin expecting to kill something, you're gonna take 9 years to clear any kind of biome. Wow, this music's kind of depressing. What happened? I should put this way down in my playlist. My bad, guys. And that was running for like 15 minutes straight, because I think it's a 30-minute song. Extended version, I should say. Alright. Let's let this soak in a little bit. Oh, Sonic Crossbow. Okay, so I actually had a Sonic Crossbow game yesterday, and the only time I screwed this thing up was when I took a hit. As soon as I took a hit while using the Sonic Crossbow, it was really bad. Like, I couldn't actually get out any kind of damage. But I honestly feel like I like it. Hey, how you doing, Dale? I'm doing well. We have a really big window of A rank and C rank items. And we actually had a lot of contributions from chat today, which is definitely nice. But if anyone was here yesterday, I think we can all agree that the Sonic Crossbow really did work. Now, I also had an Owl, and as you know, Owl does massive work too. So there's some line of thinking out there where perhaps it was the Owl that did all the work, and Sonic Crossbow was just there to take up the spotlight. And if that's true or not, I don't know. All I saw was damage numbers were flying off the meter, stuff was melting, and it was awesome. So I don't think Sonic Crossbow is a B. I actually, and against bosses, so this is probably where Sonic Crossbow is gonna get a lot of flack, because part of my criteria is it needs to be able to kill the giant, and technically Sonic Crossbow struggles against the giant pretty hard. And that's because it doesn't really aim up. You can jump in the air and shoot with it though. You can get off probably like 3 to 4 bullets in midair with a Sonic Crossbow. If that's enough to kill a giant's fist, I don't know. But as soon as the fist is down, you're really gonna do real good damage to the eyeball. So that's why I really don't want to lower the points on this thing just for boss fights. The attack pattern, I honestly don't care. Yes, it has a wicked long lockout that did massive damage to me in one of the fights, and now I'm probably kind of biased because of yesterday's gameplay. I will admit that there was one situation where I was, holding down that trigger, and all of a sudden I could not press circle. I could not dodge the oncoming damage. So in that case, yeah, it probably should lose a point for the attack pattern. So how about we do this? We deduct half a point for the attack pattern because of the lockout, and we deduct another half point because if you have like an owl behind it or some kind of ambient damage, it's absolutely awesome. I don't think Sonic Crossbow deserves to be a C. I honestly think it deserves to be an A. And thinking about like these two items side by side, they kind of do similar things. I wonder if that's better. Sonic Crossbow does actually breach stuff. We got some stun in prison quarters by itself. Like, we had no Alchemy Carbine. We had no... Oh, we did have Hokuto. Crap. That's true. I think I like this better. Only because of the amount of safety that Magic Missile gives you compared to Sonic. And like I said, I had a really good game yesterday with the Sonic Crossbow, but now that I think about it, I had Hokuto and an owl, and I think there was something else involved too. I don't know what, but perhaps Sonic was only that good because of everything I had behind it. Wow, that's all the ranged items, guys. We finished range before the hour was up, just 4 minutes to spare. And we got out of range without an F rank. We did have Ice Bow down there before, but I bumped it up. No, not Ice Bow, I had Frost Blast down there. But if you can get any kind of a fix on the Frost Blast, it's actually not that bad. And like I said, in Caverns, as soon as I drop the Frost Nova, I start taking hits. So that to me means it actually does stuff. So it doesn't deserve to be an F because technically it can do things. Unlike Valmont's whip, where in my opinion it never does anything. Ice Bow and Ice Shard is good for slow and damage heavy weapons. Yeah, so you combine it with something else and it actually does really well. So yeah, I guess technically it's not an insta-sell. There is a decision where if one drops, you might actually pick it up. Compared to Valmont Whip, where it's like that thing drops and the only time you're picking it is if you're trolling. And yeah, I troll sometimes. There's nothing wrong with trolling every now and then. You don't have to win every single game. You don't see people out there trying to have 100% Dead Cells win rate. Alright, I'm gonna let this soak in for a little bit. I want to refill my cup, get some water. You guys definitely look at the list, tell me how you feel about it. If you think it's a trash list, that is perfectly fine. You can also, so actually before I go grab this water, you can also build your own list at tiermaker.com, hashtag not sponsored. Yeah, my first 4BC win in 1.1 actually was with a Pierce All Ice Bow that I took like in prison quarters and lasted me the entire game. But anyway, you can do just like my homie here and actually make your own tier list. You can use my tier list as a template, make your own, at me at Veedotme. Once you do that, let me know that your list is far superior to my list. But anyway, I'm gonna load the game up and then grab a drink. And hopefully we'll see a quick bow drop. So I will be right back.